Dear ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of my colleagues and myself, I would like to apologize for the delay in putting up this particular chapter, but for good reasons. As we had mentioned before, we have every intention of addressing any and all events that are the result of Muhammadan Islam's actions, sayings, deeds, or thoughts anywhere on the face of our planet. One of the most persistent comments made against us by the followers of Muhammad and their supporters has been and is the subject of the Jews. That is, that the worst insult a Muhammadan can throw at another human being, especially another Muhammadan, is calling him a Jew. Any time they want to vent their frustrations on someone, they accuse their victim of being a Jew or a Zionist, even if they are Christian, Hindus, or other sects of Muhammadan Islam, and have absolutely nothing to do with the Jews or Israel. One should wonder as to why do the followers of Muhammad, almost 1,400 million or more, the absolute majority of whom have never met a Jew or an Israeli in their life, hate Jews so intensely. We have been researching this phenomenon in the last few weeks so that we can address this volatile subject in as enlightened and fair a manner as possible. Since we were anyway intending to address issues such as India, Kashmir, Pakistan, Sudan, Africans, Darfur, Arabs, Palestine, Israel, Arab refugees vis-à-vis the refugees of other nationalities, human rights in Muhammadan Ummah, freedoms of speech, religion, etc., etc., we have decided that the first of these current affairs should be the paramount subject of Arabs, Palestine, Israel, and the Jews. Please be aware that this chapter will be the last we shall put up for at least another month before we start again, because we have to attend to publishing Volume 2 of Lifting the Veil of chapters 101 to 200, including an introduction, a glossary, and more. Now I shall address our subject. Using their petrodollar wealth as clout, Muhammadan Muslim governments are doing their utmost to silence any and all disparagement of, comments on, or analysis of Muhammad and his cult belief system. For almost 1400 years, the followers of Muhammad have been able, through terror, subjugation, and mendacities, to suppress and cover up the darkest secrets of Muhammad's vile character, as clearly demonstrated in their hadiths, both to the outside world as well as to the immense majority of the followers of Muhammad, with a bodyguard of lies. Yes, a bodyguard of lies so dense that they have been able to get away with their deception for the last 1400 years. But not anymore. The reason for their current urgency is obvious: the Internet. They have at last woken up to the most apocalyptic nightmare of the cult of Muhammadan Islam, the four horsemen of their apocalypse, called knowledge, 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 and knowledge. Since 9/11 especially, the very Internet that the Muhammadan terrorists are using as an effective venue for their propaganda and the dissemination of information on how to commit atrocities against the kuffar civilians, that is, us, all over the world, is also the same that has become the best source for educating all of humanity, of so-called believers and unbelievers, about the facts and reality of the degenerate and demonic cult of Muhammad, his Quran, and his Sunnah. A chapter that will compare and contrast two belief systems and their adherents, which will most assuredly surprise many of you by its revelations. As always, we shall bring to you only facts that any of you can verify at the click of your mouse. We shall start with one of the most insidious issues of Muhammadan Islam, which is, are Muhammadan Muslims, whether Arabs or from other nationalities, victims, as they claim, or are they the victimizers? Our Western media, both on television and in print, are filled with Muhammadan Muslims complaining about how they are victims of discrimination in the world's democracies. We are told ad nauseum that they, the Muslims, are angry. Muhammadans never cease from being angry. Angry at how Christians, Hindus, Jews, or others are allegedly mistreating their fellow Muhammadan Muslims somewhere on the face of our planet. Muhammadans, after all, consider themselves as one nation, of a belief system called the Ummah, while all other human beings on earth, 80% of humanity, are considered the enemies of Muhammadan Islam, the enemies of this ummah. Enemies of Muhammadan Islam? Why so? When in fact and in reality it was Muhammad who unilaterally declared his jihad, unholy war, 1400 years ago against all so-called unbelievers and disbelievers, and 400 years before the Crusades, the remainder of unsuspecting humanity. The Muhammadans are always angry, invariably demonstrating their rage with hate-filled and contorted grimacing faces, screaming and inveighing against all unbelievers while holding their peace-loving Quran in one hand and guns, rocket launchers and daggers in the other, shouting their terror mantra, Allahu Akbar. The same Allahu Akbar that was yelled by Muhammad and his murderous thugs while attacking their unsuspecting victims in ambush in the Arabian Peninsula 1400 years ago, starting first with a sea of blood against the pagan Arabs, Judaized Arabs, and Christian Arabs. As we have mentioned on so many occasions before, Muhammadan Islam and its indoctrinated followers are set in stone in the time warp of Muhammad's 7th century Arabia. They cannot transform. Are their claims real? Are these claims based on fact? How many Muhammadans, we ask, are genuinely afraid of the threat of retaliation or aggression against them in our democracies, when in fact and in reality they flaunt their Arab dresses, their hijab and niqab in our faces in every single country in the West with total impunity? Many of those complaining interminably are well-educated and prominent academicians, politicians, clergy, and others from the Muhammadan Muslim community, as well as several well-meaning but totally ignorant and misguided British people who are articulating these so-called fears. We have therefore decided to explore this issue as comprehensively as possible on a once-and-for-all basis, leaving very few stones unturned. In order to properly assess their claims of victim status and of being the target of discrimination, we have had to find another group with whom to compare them. Based upon a lot of research and analysis, we have decided that as a matter of fairness as well as being a paramount issue in the world's current affairs, we must compare and contrast them with a similar faction scattered all over the world. Therefore, we have concluded that the only country and people that can be used as a benchmark for a comparative study are Israel and the Jewish diaspora. Since if we can prove our case using a small sample entity of people, our case will automatically be true for bigger entities such as Chinese, Americans, Indians, and Europeans. The Muhammadans, whether Arabs or others, claim that they are Muslims but hate with incredible intensity the first and earliest Muslims in world history, the descendants of the Israelites, the Jews. It is Muhammad's Quran, after all, that asserts that Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Jacob, and the tribes of Israel, Moses, Aaron, Jesus, Mary, and the apostles were all Muslims. Al-Baqarah 2.127. And remember, Abraham and Ismail raised the foundations of the house with this prayer, Our Lord, accept this service from us, for thou art all-knowing and all-hearing. Our Lord, make of us Muslims, bowing to thy will, and of our progeny a people Muslim, bowing to thy will, and show us our places for the celebration of due rights. Al-An'am 10.83. What was the reasoning about us which we gave to Abraham to use against his people? We raise whom we will, degree after degree. We gave him Isaac and Jacob. All three we guided, and before him we guided Noah, and before him we guided Noah, and among his progeny David, Solomon, Job, Joseph, Moses, and Aaron. Thus do we reward those who do good. And Zechariah, and John, and Jesus, and Elias, all in the ranks of the righteous. And Ismail, and Elisha, and Jonas, and Lot, and to all we gave favor above the nations. Since all the above are either Hebrews or Jews are Muslims, then massacring Jews and or oppressing them is against the Qur'an's instructions, and those who commit these crimes end up in hell. Dear listeners, please remember that we are addressing the issue of the Jews because they are the smallest entity that Muhammadans hate more than any of the other unbelieving kuffar. All Christians, Hindus, Buddhists, animists, etc. 80% of humanity are also on the receiving end of their hatred. We repeat the question once more. Since the above are facts, why do the followers of Muhammad, almost all of 1,400 million or more, the absolute majority of whom have never met a Jew in their life, hate Jews so extremely? The answer is, as usual, simple. They do so not because of any unhappy encounter with the Jews, but because the Arabian Muhammad in his Quran and Sunnah demands that they do. Why did the Arabian Muhammad hate the Jews with such intensity? The answer is yet again very simple. They were witnesses to his mendacities and pretensions to prophethood, just like the Christian Arabs and the pagan Arabs. Question: what do bosses of crime syndicates do with witnesses to their crimes? Answer: they have them assassinated or forever silenced. The Arabian Muhammad did just that 1400 years ago with the pagan Arabs, Judaized Arabs, and Christian Arabs. His cloned Arabized followers are doing the same 1400 years later. Absolutely nothing ever changes in the cult of Muhammadan Islam. Nothing. To highlight the Muhammadan Muslims' depravities, hypocrisy, and utter contempt for facts and reality, we have no choice but to compare them to the smallest, most victimized and hated group in their cult belief system, the Jews. Let us now ponder the following self-evident facts. Israelis and Jews are Semites. So are the Arabs. Hebrew and Arabic are sister languages. The Arabs claim to be descended of Ishmael, while the Jews are descended from Isaac. The Arabs emanated from the Arabian Peninsula and the Jews from the Kingdom of Judea. Why Israel and the Jews? Because they are the most aggrieved by the Arabs and other Muhammadan Muslims as a bone of contention between Islam and the West, especially the USA. 4 major reasons are the fuel that keep the Muhammadans' hatred burning. A. Unadulterated hatred of the Jews in particular, in Muhammad's Quran and Sunnah, actually his foremost victims. B. Institutionalized demonization and dehumanization of the Jews in all their media, sermons, and education systems. C. Avenging 5 major humiliating military defeats of Arab arms by the tiny Jewish population of Israel. D. A passionate jealousy that such a minuscule entity is most certainly superior in productivity, economically, scientifically, and culturally to most of the 25 Arab states, as well as most of the Muhammadan Muslim Ummah of over 1,400 million people. Therefore, they must eradicate the state of Israel and exterminate the Jews, since they are a thorn in their eye and a testament to all their otherwise self-inflicted failures. Why Israel and the Jews? Because Israel lays at the heart of the Middle East. Also, because about 20% of its population is Arab, and another 40% is made up of Jews dispossessed and dislocated in the 20th century from Arab-occupied lands after their conquest in the 7th and 8th centuries AD. Why Israel and the Jews? Because we believe that by choosing this comparison, we should not be accused of racism or bias, nor of Eurocentrism. We are actually comparing what should be like for like. Nonetheless, we are certain, based entirely upon our bitter experiences, that we shall be charged with being racist or pro-Israel or Zionist imperialist agents by the same Arabized and cloned followers of Muhammad, whose Quran and Hadiths are replete with hundreds upon hundreds of uncompromising hate-mongering, warmongering, and racist verses against all others, as well as against 50% of so-called believers, their womenfolk. But are the followers of Moses and the followers of Muhammad essentially like for like? What will be revealed to you, ladies and gentlemen, will actually be astounding in the degree of disparities between the two groups. Before we start looking at some of the historical background and the achievement or lack thereof of the two groups, It is vitally important for you so-called believers and unbelievers to comprehend how remarkably few Jews there are in the world in comparison to the vast numbers of Muhammadan Muslims. The greatest concentration of Jews in the world today is about 5 million living in Israel. Including the Jews of Israel, the total number of Jews worldwide is a mere 14 million souls. This is 0.2% of the human population of 6.7 billion. By comparison, there are estimated to be over 1,400 million Muhammadan Muslims, of whom about 325 million are Arab and or Arabic-speaking peoples. This translates into almost 20% of humanity. To emphasize the difference, please be aware, therefore, that there are more than 100 Muhammadan Muslims to every Jew in the world. In the course of this multi-part chapter, we shall touch upon subjects, thoughts, ideas, and statements that we have dealt with earlier and will have no choice but to point out their relevance once more in this sequence. I would like to digress momentarily, but with relevance to the issues being discussed, by addressing some comments made by several of our listeners regarding the tone of my voice. They are of the opinion that it is full of hate and anger, uncompromising and assertive. Let me tackle these comments before I embark on the remainder of this chapter. I have no hate for the followers of Muhammad because, as I have mentioned on numerous occasions, they are the first and worst victims of the cult of Muhammad. They are to be pitied and definitely not hated. Furthermore, hate consumes the mind and spirit of the individual, thus distorting and destroying one's intellect and soul. I leave this condition to the indoctrinated followers of Muhammad to prove my points whenever we watch them on television or read their comments on our chapters. Now let me address the anger and uncompromising parts by asking you, dear listeners, should not my voice be full of anger, uncompromising and assertive? In fact, should not the voices of all of us, unbelieving kuffar, be full of anger, uncompromising and assertive? After all, why should the followers of Muhammad only be allowed and are able to express their emotions with unbridled hate and fury against all of us in public, in our face, all over our democracies? Are we kuffar so unfeeling or so stupid that we cannot or should not demonstrate our rage and revulsion at what the followers of Muhammad are attempting to do to us, to our children, to our families, and to our countries? Should we not be furious at a small group of people, 20% of humanity, whose publicly and clearly repeated and declared intentions are to overthrow and or overturn our democracies, our beliefs, our institutions, and our freedoms? Oh yes, I am incensed. In fact, I am livid that people who begged, I repeat the word begged, to come to our shores, and we have given them harbor and protection, are at the same time biting the very hands that are feeding them, educating them, housing them, and freeing them from fear and subjugation. Should we not all be infuriated? I leave the answers to these questions to your forthcoming comments. Let us now together explore the truth, if any, of their claims and allegations regarding their victimhood. Ladies and gentlemen, so-called believers and unbelievers, first and foremost, I would like to pose two questions that have rarely, if ever, been asked bluntly in public, because they are not only simple and pregnant with meaning, and hence easily escape the attention of the media and academia, but are also totally politically incorrect. One, how many Westerners or unbelieving kuffar have sought refuge among the Muhammadan Muslim states in the last 30 years? Two, how many believing Muhammadan Muslims, Arabs and other nationalities have sought refuge and safety amongst us, the unbelieving kuffar, in the last 30 years? These are two very elementary questions, the answers to which will fully reveal Muhammadan Islam's threat to our freedoms and our very existence. I shall now ask a few more politically incorrect but very relevant questions that require thinking about and finding the answers to. Why? If the Muhammadan Muslim state, as the Muhammadans declare to the whole world, is supposed to be the best, the most advanced, and most egalitarian on earth, do millions upon millions of Muhammad's followers beseech and beg to take refuge among the very unbelieving kuffar, ourselves, that they insult in most verses of the Quran, in their mosques, their media, and their books? Why don't they stay in their beloved, chaste, beautiful, law-abiding, and God-fearing countries instead of flooding the lands of the kuffar? According to their Quran and their mullahs, we are ungodly, immoral, and inferior in every way, future fuel for hell's fires. So why come to us? Why are they also in Europe, the Americas, Australia, etc., if they too are as immoral, corrupt, racist, and ungodly as they tell us we are all? Simple questions that require some thought and answers. The following are only 3 verses out of hundreds that destine all of us, so-called unbelieving kuffar, our children and families, to Muhammad's and hence Allah's hell. Al-Anbiya 21.98. Verily ye unbelievers, and the false gods that you worship besides Allah are but fuel for hell. To it will ye surely come. Please remember, as we have clearly demonstrated, that Allah is only the name of the supreme rock god of the Quraysh, residing in the black stone of the Kaaba, and is hence and actually Muhammad's mouthpiece in his Quran. An-Nisa 4.76. Those who believe fight in the cause of Allah, يُقَاتِلُونَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. And those who reject faith fight in the cause of evil, يُقَاتِلُونَ فِي سَبِيلِ الطَّاغُوتِ. So fight ye, فَقَاتِلُوا, against friends of Satan. Those who reject faith are obviously us, 80% of humanity, who do not believe in Muhammad as the messenger of Allah, nor in his message. Al-Tawbah 9.29. Fight, قاتلوا, those who believe not in Allah nor the last day, nor hold that forbidden which has been forbidden by Allah and his apostle, nor acknowledge the religion of truth, Islam, even if they are of the people of the book, Christians and Jews, until they pay the jizya, with willing submission and feel themselves humiliated. The people of the book are the Christians and Jews, who must be subjugated and humiliated, even when they are paying the onerous tax in their own land to the conquering Arabs, their occupiers. Is this the equality and respect of beliefs that Muhammadans daily deceive Quran and Arabic ignoramus people with? For those who accuse us of not knowing Arabic, eat your heart out. قاتلوا الذين لا يؤمنون بالله ولا باليوم الآخر ولا يحرمون ما حرم الله ورسوله ولا يدينون دين الحق من الذين أوتوا الكتاب حتى يعطوا الجزية عن يد وهم صاغرون. Although most of them have not contributed a single penny towards our economy, we give them refuge and security, translators, lawyers, habitats to live in, schooling for their children, free medical services, benefits, etc. These cost us, the British taxpayers like you and I, billions of pounds of hard-earned money from our sweat and toil, from our future savings for our old age, from the education of our children, from the viability of our health service, etc. We should have no problem whatsoever with this if these newcomers would integrate in our society and start contributing to the economy and well-being of us all. The British people, after all, have allowed many other nationalities, cultures, and races to reside onto these isles, to integrate or even assimilate and become part and parcel of the fabric of this great nation. Among those who came to these shores were Huguenots, Irish, Jews, Italians, Greeks, West Indians, Indians, Chinese, Burmese, Africans, etc. Most have integrated and in fact helped make the British peoples even more colorful. Integration does not mean losing one's identity. Integration means to abide by the laws of the state and respect the traditions and culture of the host people who have given one asylum. Why had the Indians, for one example, who were dispossessed by the Africans in the 1970s and who came to this country mostly destitute, have within 20 years been able to produce engineers, scientists, doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs, educators, etc. They still celebrate their holy days, wear their national clothing on special occasions, go to their temples, mix and mingle with the host people without losing their identity. The very same can be said of the Chinese, Greeks, Poles, French, Jews, Italians, and more. Why is there no such thing as Buddhistophobia, or Hinduophobia, or Judeophobia, or any other nationalityphobia, except Islamophobia? Why should the multinational peoples of this great land be afraid from Muhammadan Islam? I repeat, fear of Muhammadan Islam, not of Muslims, because that is exactly what Islamophobia means. Fear of the belief system of Muhammadan Islam, not of its followers. What, in fact and reality, have we received in return for our hospitality and generosity from the immense majority of the followers of Muhammad who reside amongst us in the British Isles? Why are there areas in many major cities in the British Isles, as well as in many European cities, where even the police are afraid to go because they are controlled by the followers of Muhammad? Why are there no-go areas in Chinatown, or Little Italy, or Golders Green, but only among the followers of Muhammad? No-go areas in our own land? Yes, our own land, not only of those English natives, but of every other nationality that has received harbor and succor in this land and thence contribute to its economy and its institutions. Yes, our land. How dare any group in this cradle of democracy separate itself from the body of the nation and declare itself above the law and traditions of the land? The Muhammadan Muslim entity, which as we speak declares that it will impose its own law called Sharia on all the inhabitants. In fact, it is most remarkable how restrained we unbelieving kuffar are in the face of such unconcealed hatred, anger, disrespect, destruction, disloyalty, and provocation displayed and committed by the followers of Muhammad all over the world in the names of Allah and Islam. Al-Ma'idah 5.51. O ye who believe, take not the Jews and the Christians for your friends and protectors. They are but friends and protectors to each other, and he amongst you that turns to them for friendship is of them. O ye who believe, take not for friends and protectors those who take your religion for a mockery or sport, whether among those who receive the scripture, Christians and Jews, before you, or among those who reject faith. Where is the ambiguity in these verses regarding the fate of any so-called believers who would attempt to integrate amongst us? How is it possible for any follower of Muhammad to deny these crystal clear Arabic Quranic verses forbidding its adherents from ever being part of the fabric of any society that is not Muhammadan Muslim? How can any true and fundamentalist believer break these Quranic instructions without becoming an unbelieving kafir? These verses, amongst hundreds of others more, prohibit the followers of Muhammad from ever integrating. Contrary to the blatantly untruthful accusations made by the leaders of the followers of Muhammad in the United Kingdom, in Europe, in India, in the Americas, etc., alleging that the host peoples are racist, it is crystal clear that, on the contrary, it is the Muhammadans themselves who choose to live separately from the host people in the United Kingdom, in Europe, as well as anywhere else in Dar al-Harb, the territory of war, among the unbelieving kuffar, because of their own volition and not because of any discrimination against them. They have been creating their own mini-states within many of the European host cities, and yet they have the audacity to allege racism. They are creating Muhammadan Muslim separate colonies in our countries. Again and again and again, we catch the followers of Muhammad claiming victimization when in fact and in reality it is they who are victimizing us in our own lands. They do so with an obscene degree of hypocrisy, duplicity, and brazenness that boggles the mind. We watch their mullahs and other leaders on our television in our country, inciting their followers to overthrow our democratic institutions, while bearing placards calling for the Holocaust upon the peoples of Europe and how Islam will conquer the world. And they have the goal to assert that there is no reason for Islamophobia. Muhammadan Muslims are using our freedoms and democracy to slowly but relentlessly undermine our liberties and institutions. Our spineless and mindless leaders, whether among the politicians, clergy or the media, are too criminally stupid, bribed or ignorant to understand this inexorable creeping death. Furthermore, we are deliberately and falsely misinformed by the same followers of Muhammad that those who are thus demonstrating are only the fringe radicals. Really? How small is this fringe of radicals when we have not witnessed a single counter-demonstration by the so-called silent majority among the followers of Muhammad in any of the democracies wherein there are an estimated 53 million Muhammadans? Even if these radicals are only 1% of the Muhammadans, then they represent an enormous number of 530,000 potential terrorists. Why not one single demonstration in all of the last 30 years? Why not one single demonstration with placards stating "not in our name"? Why not anywhere in the whole of Europe? We are not, repeat, not speaking of Muhammadans in their despotic Muslim states from which they escaped to us, but the ones under the freedoms of Europe. I remind you, so-called believers and unbelievers, of what Muhammad asserted. Silence, he said, means consent. Hence the fact that they are not demonstrating means that while they may not be participating in the demonstrations, they otherwise agree with the actions of the so-called radicals. Marcus Tullius Cicero, Roman statesman and lawyer, said in the Roman Senate in 42 BC, "A nation can survive its fools and even the ambitious, but it cannot survive treason from within. An enemy at the gates is less formidable, for he is known and carries his banner openly. But the traitor moves amongst those within the gates freely, his sly whispers rustling through all the alleys, heard in the very halls of government itself. For the traitor appears not a traitor. He speaks in accents familiar to his victims, and he wears their face and their arguments. He appeals to the baseness that lies deep in the hearts of all men. He rots the soul of a nation. He works secretly and unknown in the night to undermine the pillars of the city. He infects the body politic so that it can no longer resist. A murderer is less to fear. The traitor is the plague." That is exactly how we suffered 7/7 and the Americans 9/11. The mass murderers were from amongst us. So-called believers and unbelievers, I shall now reveal to you one of the worst cases of misinformation and disinformation that is deliberately used to contort the meaning of two words that has ever been insinuated into the consciousness of the world's public, both by the followers of Muhammad for understandable reasons, but also by our own media and leaders for yet unknown reasons. Ladies and gentlemen, contrary to what the deceitful followers of Muhammad and their allies do their utmost to misinform you about those Muhammadan Muslims who are demonstrating with twisted and contorted, hate-filled faces against our way of life and liberty, they are actually the normal followers of Muhammad. Yes, you heard right. They are the normal, fundamentalist followers of Muhammad. They are, after all, the believers, those who abide by the dictates of Muhammad's Quran and hence must perforce emulate his Sunnah. I repeat once more, they are the normal Muhammadan Muslims. They are not radical Muslims. They are ordinary Muslims, the very best of the lot. The shocking fact is that the radicals are actually the ones who try to integrate and befriend us. They are the ones who do not believe in jihad. They are the ones who are attempting to live in peace and harmony with the host peoples. They are the ones who follow the 5 precepts of Islam, but not the unwritten 6 called jihad. They are the ones who are therefore considered traitors by the normal and jihadi Muhammadans. Just in case any of you have doubts, I shall repeat the relevant verse once more. Al-Ma'idah 5.51. O ye who believe, take not the Jews and the Christians for your friends and protectors. They are but friends and protectors to each other, and he amongst you that turns to them for friendship is of them. As we mentioned on several occasions before, Osama bin Laden is not a radical, but is in fact the embodiment of the most perfect follower of Muhammad, a fundamentalist Muhammadan Muslim. He is the wonderfully normal Muhammadan. The Taliban of Afghanistan are also not radical. They embody the most wonderfully normal and perfect Muhammadan Muslim state or form of government. In summation, and without a shadow of a doubt, Osama and the Taliban actually represent the typical faces of the believing fundamentalist followers of Muhammad. They are the normal ones and not radical. Will you please think carefully and deeply about what I have just explained to you? Because by coming to the correct understanding of words and adjectives, you will not ever again be deceived by others who deliberately or not got the wrong end of the stick. Our leaders and those in Europe have been spending millions of pounds of our tax-paying monies to find out why the new generation of Muhammadans born and bred in Europe are being radicalized. How criminally stupid can they be? What else can this new breed learn in their mosques and schools other than hating and warring against us? They are not being radicalized. They are being taught to be good, normal, fundamentalist, believing Muhammadan Muslims. The Muhammadan youth of today is finding and gaining confidence in its ancient and well-established Islamic ways and is discovering its roots. They are actually growing up in the very Muhammadan mini-ghetto states that their leaders have created, being taught by their mullahs and elders to follow the Quran and Muhammad's Sunnah. The new generation of Muhammadans are being incubated and growing in exactly the normal environment that we are describing, the same way that they would have been indoctrinated had they stayed in Pakistan, Iran, Arabia, etc. As we all know, there is no prospect whatsoever of updating or modernizing Islam, as the whole regime and cult expressly forbids even the smallest revision. In actuality, even the suggestion of this is considered to be all-out heresy, punishable by death without question. The reality that Muhammadan Islam is such an absurdly inflexible, stupid, and warmongering cult that is so alien to our Western traditions and thought, it is almost beyond the grasp of the Western mind. That is why millions of well-meaning and decent Europeans are failing to face, let alone accept, the shocking truth. So far in our chapters, we have overturned, among others more, the following extremely important but deliberate misinformation and falsifications perpetrated by the followers of Muhammad. That Allah is not God, and most certainly not the God of Abraham, Moses, or Jesus. That Islam does not mean peace, but the concept of the belief in a one and only God, which preceded Muhammad and his Quran by at least 25 centuries. That jihad is not spiritual, but physical warfare against all unbelieving kuffar. That Muhammadan Islam is actually the cult of Muhammad and is not a religion. That fundamentalist, believing Muhammadan Muslims are the normal ones and are not radical. I would like to end this section with Winston Churchill's observations in his The River War, first edition, volume 2, regarding the conquest of the Sudan, pages 248 to 250. How dreadful are the curses which Muhammadanism lays on its votaries. Besides the fanatical frenzy, which is as dangerous in a man as hydrophobia in a dog, there is this fearful fatalistic apathy. The effects are apparent in many countries. Improvident habits, slovenly systems of agriculture, sluggish methods of commerce, and insecurity of property exist wherever the followers of the Prophet rule or live. A degraded sensualism deprives this life of its grace and refinement, the next of its dignity and sanctity. The fact that in Muhammadian law every woman must belong to some man as his absolute property, either as child, a wife, or a concubine, must delay the final extinction of slavery until the faith of Islam has ceased to be a great power among men. Individual Muslims may show splendid qualities. Thousands became the brave and loyal soldiers of the Queen. All know how to die, but the influence of the religion paralyzes the social development of those who follow it. No stronger retrograde force exists in the world. Far from being moribund, Muhammadanism is a militant and proselytizing faith. Even 109 years ago, Churchill had perfectly measured Muhammadan Islam with his usual candor and superb English language. As we have repeatedly said, nothing whatsoever changes in the demonic cult of Muhammadan Islam. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to remind you once more that the followers of Muhammad, to stop the world from finding out the facts and reality of Muhammad's Quran and cult belief system, have every intention of making it criminal under international law to criticize Muhammadan Islam, the Quran, or Muhammad. They have the impudence to demand respect from the whole world while they show none whatsoever to any Christians, Hindus, Buddhists, Jews, animists, or any other so-called unbelieving kuffar. As we speak, they are fulfilling their publicly declared agenda of Islamizing the whole world and are being aided and abetted by many of our criminally negligent politicians, clergy, academicians, and the media. We are being sold into slavery by the very leaders who have sworn to protect our freedoms and the rule of law. Hence, as a matter of extreme urgency, we had decided to put up this crucial multi-part chapter that is highlighting the differences between their way of life and those of the so-called kuffar, ourselves. I shall now start addressing, comparing and contrasting the Muhammadan Arabs and other followers of Muhammad, called Al-Ummah al-Muhammadiyya, with the Jews of Israel and diaspora. I shall begin with a very concise history of the Jews in the British Isles. The first Jews arrived in England after the Norman conquest in 1066 and settled in several major cities, especially London and York. From 1118, after the coronation of Richard the Lionheart, during the Crusades and thereon, their persecution by the Church increased significantly because of the fervor generated by their leaders as the killers of Jesus. Their persecution and slaughter continued until their expulsion on July 18, 1290, when all the dispossessed Jews of England left for France and Flanders. They were only allowed to take with them what they could carry. For the next 365 years, no Jews were allowed back until Cromwell in 1655. As an aside, Shakespeare wrote about the Merchant of Venice without having met a single Jew in England. For the subsequent 350 years, the Jews of England became fully integrated in English society, contributing enormously to its wealth, prosperity, industry, culture, art, sciences, law, etc. In spite of all their persecution during these 350 years, there was never a case of either treason or disloyalty by the Jews of Britain. In fact, during World War I, British Jews were fighting against German and Austrian Jews. Each group was supporting the nation amongst which they were residing. This is called loyalty. Let us now contrast this with the disloyalty shown by British-born Muhammadan Muslims, even after their massacres in 77 at the return of our soldiers from Iraq and Afghanistan. Neither Lord Ahmad nor the Islamic Council condemned their behavior because his loyalty and theirs are with the Ummah of Muhammad, the believing people, and not to the crown or to the British people, the unbelieving kuffar. Since we are comparing the Muhammadans with the Jews, we would like to contrast their attitude with that of the Jews of Israel. Be aware that in Israel, with a population of about 5 million, 10% of the population, 500,000 of them went on repeated demonstrations against some actions taken by the Israeli government, their own government, vis-à-vis the Palestinians. Many prominent and lay Jews regularly distance or complain about certain actions taken by the Israeli government. Contrast this with the deafening silence of the followers of Muhammad in our country, in Europe, in the USA, or Australia, as well as in all the Muslim states. Compare this with the Muhammadan worldwide jubilation at the destruction of the Twin Towers of 9/11? Where are the voices in print and in the media of the so-called moderate Muhammadan Muslims in this country or any other? Muhammad also repeatedly reminds us that war is deception. Of course it is. He was, after all, one of the most accomplished in this art. That is why Muhammadan leaders do their utmost to regularly deceive us, the unbelievers, regarding the facts and reality of Muhammad, his Quran and his Sunnah. The true sufferers in Europe and world history of victimization have been and continue to be the Jews. But they do not go about demonstrating like demented savages with hate-filled and contorted faces, holding their Torah in one hand and guns, knives and rocket launchers in the other, threatening and menacing Christians or Muhammadans with death and destruction. Using the same illogic of the Muhammadans, the Jews have every reason to go about blowing up and slaughtering unarmed civilian Germans in restaurants, buses, trains or planes. But they do not. Why only the followers of Muhammad? Many other races and religions suffered at the hands of others in recent history. But they do not go about massacring their perceived or even actual enemies. They do not do so. Why only the followers of Muhammad? Hindus have as much right to slaughter Arabs and Muhammadans who had invaded and butchered their people and Islamized others. But they do not do so. Why only the Muhammadan Muslims? How about the black Africans? After all, they have the best reasons to slaughter Arabs and other Muhammadans who for 1400 years of systematic and institutionalized slavery caused the death of an estimated 140 million Africans. But they do not do so. Why only the followers of Muhammad? In short, their excuse that they are only taking revenge or are defending themselves against their perceived enemies does not hold ground historically, logically, or morally. They do what they are doing only because Muhammad's Quran and his Sunnah instruct them to do so. They are only abiding by their scripture. They are not radical. They are the normal Muhammadan Muslims. One of the worst tragedies and ironies in human history is the fact that the Jews are hated and persecuted almost entirely by the very belief systems that are founded on their religion and scripture, Christianity and Muhammadan Islam. Nowhere are there records of either discrimination or oppression of Jews under Buddhism, Hinduism, or Zoroastrian religions throughout the millennia, only by Christians and Muhammadans. Nowhere can anyone point out throughout recorded history that the Jews were ever a threat to either Christianity or Muhammadan Islam. Not numerically, not militarily, not politically, not financially, not demographically, not economically, not theologically, and not in any other manner, especially since they have always been and still are a very small civilian minority in all the countries they reside in. Furthermore, the hatred of Christians and Muhammadans was not and is not based on race. It was and still is a hatred based entirely upon beliefs. In the case of Christianity, for the last 1700 years, the Jews have been persecuted because of the perception that their ancestors were the cause for Jesus' crucifixion. In the case of the Muhammadans, for the last 1400 years, the Jews have been persecuted because Muhammad falsely declared them the enemies of Islam in his Quran and Sunnah. Neither belief systems had actual or real reasons to hate the Jews, in spite of all the false conspiracy theories perpetrated against them throughout the centuries. Not one of them is a fact. Regardless of the systematic oppression and discrimination of the Jews at the hands of Christians and Muhammadans, the historical records clearly show that they have been contributing to the advancement of human knowledge in all its branches in most of the countries that harbored them. As Wafa Sultan, the Muslim-born psychologist turned apostate, said in one of the most devastating interviews in Al Jazeera TV against a so-called Muhammadan scholar, the Jews are not only the people of the book, they are people of books. All of our listeners, so-called believers or unbelievers, should listen to her splendid serenity and her marvelous logic in her attacks against Muhammadan Islam on YouTube videos. Her superb Arabic is matched by her scholarly and thorough knowledge of Muhammad and his Quran. Another wonderful source of invaluable information regarding Muhammadan Islam and the Islamic world is www.memri.org, which has the most remarkable and damaging library of the most authentic, real-life videos of political and religious current affairs from all over the Arab and Muhammadan world. Watching these videos will swing one between extreme terror and unstoppable hilarity. Ladies and gentlemen, please be aware that our focus on the subject of the Jews does not, by any stretch of the imagination, exclude the contributions and achievements of other peoples during the same periods that we are addressing. Our objective is only to demonstrate that even when we compare and contrast the followers of Muhammad with the smallest national cum religious group, then the results and conclusions that will be derived at would be many more magnitudes greater when comparing them with the more immense groups in the world. In our next and final section of this chapter, we shall compare and contrast the achievements or lack thereof of the followers of Muhammad of over 1,400 millions with those of the followers of Moses of about 14 millions worldwide. To be accurate, we shall compare the followers of Muhammad of over 1,400 millions with the followers of Moses of about 14 millions, starting with the rise of Muhammadan Islam 1400 years ago. Muhammad started upon his mission of spreading his Quran in the year 610 AD. His tribe of Quraysh, as well as most of the Arabs of the peninsula, were illiterate nomadic or semi-nomadic pagans. When and where Muhammad was born, there was no civilization. The most literate and productive people in the peninsula of the Arabs were the Judaized and Christian Arabs. They were not only agriculturists and manufacturers, but also excellent traders with their co-religionists to the north in modern Iraq, Syria, Judea, Palestine, the Christian Byzantine Empire, and the Sassanid Persian Empire. Muhammad died circa 632 AD, having had most of the Christian and Judaized Arabian tribes, indigenous Arabs, destroyed or exiled. His first Khalifa Abu Bakr needed 2 years of slaughtering Muslim apostates to subjugate all of the pagan Arabians to the terror of the sword of Muhammadan Islam. If one is in doubt, witness the sword on the flag of Saudi Arabia, the birthplace of Muhammad. In 634 AD, he was followed by Umar ibn al-Khattab, the second Khalifa, during whose reign of about 10 years, the Arabs embarked on one of the fastest series of conquests in history up to that time. Not one of them was in self-defense, as they allege, since they were the first and foremost aggressors. It was Umar who ethnic cleansed almost the whole of the Arabian Peninsula of its native indigenous Judaized and Christian Arabs unto the present day. So much for another deceptive mantra of the Muhammadans regarding their otherwise non-existent religious tolerance. By the year 644 AD of Umar's assassination, they had conquered the Byzantine armies, wresting from them Syria, Judea, Palestine, and Egypt in the west, as well as Iraq and the Sassanid Persian Empire in the east. The illiterate and unsophisticated nomadic hordes of Arabia became masters of 3 ancient and enlightened civilizations within a decade, with unimaginable riches, booty, plunder, and slaves. Ladies and gentlemen, please be fully aware of the following extremely important points. The Arabs had absolutely nothing, either intellectual or spiritual, to impart to the conquered civilizations upon whom they descended like the plague of a swarm of locusts. On the contrary, it is they, over the subsequent decades and centuries, who gained knowledge of everything of value from their subject peoples. In modern Iraq, for example, there lived tens of thousands of Jews whose ancestors were displaced by the Babylonians from the kingdom of Judea in 586 BC. They were among the most cultured and literate in the area, with learning academies in several of the most important cities at Sura, Pumbasita, Nahardiya, and Mahuza. It was in these academies that the Babylonian Talmud was compiled. The official writing of the Persian Sassanid Empire was Aramaic Hebrew letters, but the language was Middle Persian. The illiterate Arabs used the services of these educated peoples, Jews, Christians and Persians, to help them run the administration, taxation and communications of the occupied territories. The Arabs learned everything from them through the fact that the Christians, Jews and Zoroastrians, whether they had converted to Muhammadan Islam or not, were the ones who translated the ancient works of their civilizations, be they Greek, Roman, Hebrew, Egyptian, Persian or Indian, to Arabic. It was from amongst the subject peoples called Al-Mawali that their mosques, palaces, libraries, navy, architecture, hygiene, medicine, astronomy, arithmetic, geometry, navigation, philosophy, etc. were constructed and or disseminated. Without the one-sided and enormous contributions made by the subject peoples, the Arabs and other Muhammadans would not have been able to build further knowledge or even new knowledge without these earlier solid foundations. For Muhammadans to declare and pretend that they created the sciences and literature under Muhammadan Islam, as if from nothing, is not only intellectually dishonest in the extreme, but also obscenely illogical, immoral, and evidently false. As we have clearly established in our chapters 21, Myth of Islamic Civilization, and 69, Ilm or Knowledge, Muhammadan Islam is mired in the Quran and only the Quran, since they sincerely believe that it contains every item of knowledge from nuclear fission to geology, astronomy, biology, physics, psychology, oceanography, etc. It was the conquering Arabian hordes who burnt the hundreds of thousands of ancient manuscripts of accumulated wisdom and knowledge of the Egyptian civilization held in the Alexandria Library. Because as Umar ibn al-Khattab told his troops, if they contain nothing about Islam, they are worthless. They use them instead as fuel for bathhouses. The Arab Empire expanded relentlessly over the subsequent decades, and by the year 732 AD, occupying almost 9 million square miles of territory, slaughtering, subjugating and humiliating tens of millions of people on 3 continents. The turning point for Europe occurred at the Battle of Poitiers or Tours in France, our chapter 81, when Charles Martel defeated and reversed the tide of Muhammad's followers, thus saving European civilization from the darkness of fundamentalist Muhammadan Islam. Between the years 730 AD till 1430 AD, under the Arab occupation, there were numerous and important advances made in mathematics, astronomy, alchemy, philosophy, botany, and other subjects. Of the 80 or more scientists that we have records of, almost 90% were from the subject peoples such as Christians, Jews, Zoroastrians, Egyptians, and others who had either converted to Muhammadan Islam or remained in their faith. Only less than 10% were from pure Arabic stock. Most important of all, so-called believers and unbelievers, these advances were made by invariably secular Muhammadans under the auspices of more tolerant or more enlightened rulers. Several of these scholars were either murdered or exiled because they were not perceived as fundamentalist Muhammadans. The Arab conquest brought under one empire many civilizations and cultures that were able to cross-fertilize each other, not because of Muhammadan Islam, but in spite of it. From the year 1430 till 1950, an extensive period of more than 500 years, nothing of value was contributed to human knowledge in any field from among the hundreds of millions of Muhammadans on 3 continents. Nothing. Even the so-called Golden Age in Spain was not as golden as the Muhammadans would have us believe. The historical records show that these periods of sanity were overcome by others of insanity when Christians and Jews were slaughtered, forced to convert, or were exiled from the land of their nativity by the occupying Arab imperialists. Please always remember that it was the Arabs who occupied and subjugated the peoples of Spain, France, Italy, Armenia, Iraq, Syria, Judea, Palestine, Egypt, North Africa, Persia, etc. As imperialists, they were and still are among the most parasitic in history. They sucked the lifeblood of their conquered peoples, intellectually, spiritually, artistically, culturally, linguistically, and theologically, giving them back nothing more than their own nomadic, unlearned, and uncivilized desert culture. Throughout the last 1400 years, the Jews suffered persecutions and slaughter at the hands of Muhammadan as well as Christian fundamentalists, albeit at different periods of history in different countries. When they had safe periods under enlightened Christian rulers, they excelled, and the same went for the Muhammadan ones. At no period of their history did they allow their spirit to collapse or to give up, in spite of the fact that they were very small in numbers and had no one to protect them but the rulers of these states. At no time, throughout their 2,500 years of diaspora, did they ever forget or stop yearning for the establishment of the Jewish Commonwealth back in the promised land of their nativity and its capital, Jerusalem. Not once during the 1400 years of Arab and Muhammadan Islamic occupation of Judea, Palestina, did the followers of Muhammad ever make Jerusalem the capital of their caliphate. Many among the illustrious philosophers, theologians, scientists, and translators of the Arab Empire were Jews or Jewish converts to Islam. Historically, it is clear that while some of the Jews were suffering persecution and humiliation in one or more countries, other communities were faring much better. With the Renaissance, and especially after the Napoleonic Wars and the establishment of the United States of America, the Jewish contribution in most fields of knowledge accelerated enormously. Their appetite to learn was unquenchable. Their assimilation in Europe and American societies was spectacular, to say the least. While the Christians and Jews were inventing, discovering, creating, and exploring everything they can, the followers of Muhammad, in their hundreds of millions, were stagnating in squalor, illiteracy, ignorance, and servitude to their despotic political and theological leaders. In the 500 years from 1450 to 1950, no one can name 5 Muhammadans who have contributed anything of value for the advancement of human knowledge in any field from among the hundreds of millions who existed. Not even 5 names. The same can be said about those who have lived in the Arabian Peninsula for the last 1400 years. One cannot name 5 human beings. The indoctrinated followers of Muhammad and many politically correct beings do not ask the question, why is this so? How is it possible? If, as they keep telling us, that the Quran loves knowledge, do we find its followers amongst the least literate or learned in the world? How is this possible when they actually represent 20% of humanity and occupy almost 11 million square miles, or 21% of the land surface of the earth, of which the total area of its 6 habitable continents, Antarctica excluded, is around only 52 million square miles? How is this possible when we know how much wealth in natural resources are contained in these lands? How is it possible that over 1,400 million Muhammadans cannot and do not match the intellectual and economic productivity of 14 million Jews worldwide? How can a mere 5 million Jews of Israel, the alleged descendants of monkeys, in their tiny 8,000 square miles, 1 out of 1,375th of Muhammadan territories, without any natural resources, produce thousands more scientific papers, more inventions, more technologies, and more discoveries than the combined output of all the alleged superhuman Muhammadans put together? The most astounding and remarkable indicator of what we are addressing are the Nobel Prizes. The Nobel Prizes are awarded by the Nobel Foundation of Sweden to men and women who have rendered the greatest service to humankind. Between 1901 and 2008, more than 750 Nobel Prizes were handed out. Of these, at least 159 are Jews. Let us look at these figures statistically. The Jews represent 0.2% of the world's population, while the Muhammadans are over 20%. Yet the Jews, the alleged descendants from monkeys, have collected over 20% of all the Nobel Prizes in physics, biomedicine, chemistry, economics, and literature. The remaining 79.8% of humanity collected the remainder, among whom were 5 Muhammadans for achievements made among the kuffar and not in their native Muhammadan cultures. Excluding these prizes, everything that the followers of Muhammad wear or use was and is invented by 80% of unbelieving kuffar, with not a single contribution of value from the followers of Muhammad in any of them: medicine, engineering, architecture, biology, electronics, space, oceanography, geology, botany, or any other field of human intellect. The above statements and more can be easily verified at the click of your mouse. The disproportionate contributions made by the unbelieving kuffar, compared to almost the total absence from the believing Muhammadans in over 53 countries from different cultures and races, must have a foundational reason. This is not an arbitrary aberration. This is a colossal singularity in human lack of achievement, especially when we are repeatedly reminded of their once upon a time so-called Islamic civilization. Why did this alleged civilization wither away if its foundation is based upon a Quran full of knowledge? The Quran, after all, continued and continues to be the guide of the believers in every aspect of their life from birth to death. The answer is actually very simple. It is evident that this very deep anomaly can only be understood by very perceptive or sophisticated people, which is as follows. Every aspect of their life, right down to how to wash one's private parts, as well as how to think of and despise every human being on earth that does not totally conform to their own narrow agenda, is firmly established for all time, with no prospect of change, revision, improvement, or adaptation to different places or times by Muhammadan Islam. This means that the moment Muhammadans find their Islamic identity, they can stop thinking independently, since everything is determined for them from then on. Again and again, we have to point out to all of you that the only time Muhammadans were able to contribute anything of value was under the rule of tolerant and hence mostly secular rulers. Never under fundamentalist Muhammadan Islam. Never. The Christians and Jews were to evolve intellectually and be able to separate church and temple from the state. The Muhammadans cannot or are unwilling to do this separation of mosque and state. Christians and Jews are able to look at their scriptures, investigate them, critique them, and re-evaluate them in the light of the 21st century conditions without having to deny their holiness in totality. Muhammadans will not change an iota of what Muhammad alleged was revealed to him by Allah's Gabriel. They are thus forever stuck in the time warp of Muhammad's 7th century Arabia, from which point they cannot progress or adapt. This year, Islam's and Judaism's holiest holy days overlapped for 10 days. During that period, Muhammadan Muslims racked up over 389 dead bodies in terror attacks across 10 countries, while the Jews worked on their 159th Nobel Prize. What have the Arabs and Muhammadans contributed to humanity in the last 30 years? Not an iota in knowledge, but they have been and are the best at hijacking planes, murdering their unarmed passengers, also in cars, buses, trains, restaurants, airports, hotels, etc. They are perfecting more and more methods of terror against invariably civilian targets all over the world. They have cost the economies of the world trillions of dollars in expenses in implementing security methods. They have caused the most horrendous delays at airports because of security. We, the public, in our millions, have to waste at least 4 hours every time we intend to fly to our destinations. The cost to us has been and is burdensome. When we confront the Muhammadans with these subjects, we get the most incredibly unintelligent answers imaginable. When we asked, for example, about the disproportionate number of the Jewish Nobel laureates, their answer was simple and emphatic. The Nobel Institute is Zionist. When asked about the discrepancies between the Quran and the Bible, Their answer is again quick and simple. The Bible is corrupted. The Quran is perfect. No proof, no logic, no facts are required. We say so. End of discussion. They have a simplistic and imbecile answer to everything. Their ability to deny all facts and reality is not only astounding, but extremely frightening when one realizes that we are dealing with a hermetically and impenetrable closed mindset. Every single item we have so far addressed has a common denominator called the Quran. All Muhammadan denials and accusations that everything bad happening to them or by them is because of others do not and cannot hold sway anymore. We have shown in these sections that even when we compare the Muhammadans to the smallest entity, the Jews, they fail both as an ummah and as a cult in being benevolent contributors to the rest of humanity. Their cult belief system is the root cause of all their misery, anger, joylessness, hate-mongering, warmongering, racism, ignorance and stupidity, and the internet is helping reveal all this to all of them and all of us. That is why they must shut us up or down. That is why we, the Ummah of the Kuffar, all Christians, Hindus, Buddhists, Jews, animists and others, must be one Ummah. All for one and one for all. I would like to leave you with the following quotes. An appeaser is one who feeds a crocodile hoping it will eat him last. Winston Churchill. Evil triumphs when good men do nothing. Edmund Burke.